Hi, this is Mashnu, and here is game number 7 of the Great Chess Miniatures. This time I've chosen for a game that was played by Garry Kasparov, one of the best players in the world in chess history. He was the best player during his career, world champion, and there were so many tournaments that Kasparov played where he ended more than 1 point ahead of the number 2. So he was clear the best player in his times. Well, he stopped playing chess now, but we still have his games. This one was played in 1978. That means that Kasparov was only 15 years old, and he was playing against Grandmaster Mark Taimanov. Here Kasparov opened with knight to f3. Taimanov answered d5, and then g3, knight f6, bishop to g2, and bishop to f5. So what black is doing, he's bringing his bishop out of the pawn chain before playing e6, so he doesn't get stuck with this bishop on c8 after playing e6. Then this bishop is very difficult to develop. We see that in the French defense, for example. So then black has to find some way like b6 and bishop a6 or bishop b7. But he brings it now out of the pawn chain, and Kasparov answers here with c4. Now the choice for black is to take this pawn or not to take this pawn. Well, mostly it's not taken, because taking this pawn on c4 would mean that the diagonal for the white bishop is being opened completely. Black would give up this influence in the center, and the pawn that comes on c4 will probably fall later. So it's not a very good thing to do. The most common moves here are c6 and e6. In the game, e6 was played, and because of this bishop that has gone from c8 to f5, a possible weakness we see here on b7. So Kasparov plays here queen to b3, attacking the pawn on b7. Now black plays knight to a6. The idea is clear. He has two possibilities: to go to c5 to attack the queen and defend b7, and also to go to b4 with the idea of giving a check on c2, trapping this rook on a1. Now here white didn't take on b7. He played queen to b5 check. Now why didn't he take on b7? Let's have a look. If you take here on b7, we must always be careful with this kind of moves. In some chess books, let's say, that learn chess to beginners, to children, they say never take with your queen on b7 or on b2 if you're playing black, even if it's a good move. Well, that sounds like a very strange rule, but it's very something to remember. Taking on b7 or taking on b2 with black is often very dangerous. Now in this case, for example, knight to b4 can be played to threaten knight to c2, and here if knight to d4 to defend the c2 square, then black already can play rook to b8 attacking the queen. Now the queen cannot go to a6 nor to c6, so he has to take on a7, and then rook a8, queen b7, the rook can go back to b8, so black already has the possibility of repeating moves. So this taking on b7 is something that you must be really sure about before you do it. In the game, queen to b5 check was played, and after c6, now white took on b7. Now what's the big difference? After queen to b7, you see here the 7th rank now has been opened, because the pawn is not longer on c7. So that means that after this we have the possibility of threatening checkmate on f7 after knight to e5. Here black played knight to b4 with the idea of giving this check on c2, and white answered knight to e5, threatening checkmate on f7. Now to prevent this checkmate, black played knight to d7, and white took on d7. Now black played knight to c2 check, The king went to d1, and here black played knight takes a1. At this point Kasparov played the move e4, attacking the bishop. A more clear and faster way to win would have been to play knight to e5, threatening mate on f7. Now, to prevent this, black could play bishop to e7 to block this 7th rank, but in that case knight takes c6 follows, and here black's in trouble. If he moves the queen to c8 or b8, then follows queen takes e7 checkmate. And if he moves the queen to d7, let me show you, queen d7, then queen takes a8 check, bishop d8, and then simply we trade everything on d8. Queen takes d8 check, queen takes, knight takes, king takes, and now if we look at the position, white has won a piece, and this knight on a1 is in trouble. So here knight to a3 is a good move to prevent the knight from escaping via the c2 square. So white has won here. Let's go back to the game, because in the game something different happened. Kasparov didn't play knight to e5, but he played e4. Oh, by the way, after knight to e5, the defense bishop to g6 is also not enough because of queen takes c6 check. After king to e7, then we can give a check on b7, and now follows king is e8, queen b5 check, king e7, and the knight can go to c6 and win the queen check. If the king, let's see here, this, if the king here goes to f6, well, we can already feel that this is not going to end well for black, bringing this king so forward, and indeed there is actually being persuaded to advance more and more, and this is not going to end very well. After this e4 check, if king takes g4, then we have h3 check, king to h5, bishop f3 check. Well, the king is being chased everywhere he goes. Here we can advance d4, giving check with the bishop on c1, and it's actually almost checkmate. The only solution now for black is to give his queen on g5, but that's of course ridiculous. So this is this could have been the consequence if the king goes to f6 trying to escape, but that's useless. So that means that in this position bishop to g6 wouldn't be enough. Now in the game Kasparov played e4 here, and after d takes e4 he played knight to e5, and after bishop to g6 he took on g6. Of course he could have played queen takes c6 with the actually almost the same variation as we just saw, but he chose actually for a very simple win by knight takes g6, h takes g6, and now bishop takes e4. The threat is bishop takes c6, and how to stop the threat? There is no good way. If the rook goes to c8 to defend c6, then we simply take here, and after rook takes, queen takes, and after queen d7 we trade everything, and you see this knight on a1 is going to be trapped. The next move is b3, and the threat now that is impossible to stop is bishop to b2. So that means that white wins here easily, and well, perhaps for the spectators it would have been more beautiful if Kasparov wouldn't have taken here, but he would have played this queen to c6, because this variation is simply more spectacular than the one in the game. But anyway, a very strong game by a 15-year-old Garry Kasparov against Grandmaster Mark Taimanov. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you next time on YouTube. Goodbye.